So, hi, good evening, everyone. And thanks, ladies and gentlemen, and especially Officer Adi Kakkar for joining this very important informational session. Often our community our clients ask, when do we call the police? Are there any concerns in calling the police? Will the police do? What will law enforcement do? How can they help us? And that's why, considering all of these needs and questions which had come up from the community, we are really delighted to welcome Officer Adi Kakkar, who's joining us today as a special guest. Welcome, Officer Adi. Welcome to this session and taking this time out of your busy schedule. Would you mind sharing a brief introduction about yourself?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you all having me today. My name's Adi Kakkar. I've been a police officer for about 4 years now. And over that time, I've handled a pretty wide range of calls. A big portion of that has been domestic related situations and mental health crisis calls. Those are definitely some of the more complex cases that we deal with. And honestly, I think they've really shaped how I approach the job itself and or just life outside of work. I'd say one of my biggest strengths is staying calm in high stress situations and focusing on the de-escalation of it all first. And a lot of times when we show up as police officers, emotions are already high. So, and things are tense, and how we communicate in those first few minutes can honestly plan out the entire thing, and it makes a huge difference. So I really try to slow things down, separate people, and figure out what's actually going on before jumping into conclusions. And another big part of the job that people don't always see is just working with other resources, whether that's hospitals, social workers, or victim advocates, or other organizations, much like Sanjeevni. And it's not just about what we do on scene, it's always also about making sure that people have support after we leave as well. Because ours is just the initial interaction of it all, right? And I also just want to say, I mean, I understand that in a lot of South Asian communities, there can be added pressure around family, reputation, or even just hesitation to involve police at all. So part of why I'm here is to hopefully make things a little bit more transparent and answer questions as honestly as I can and make it feel less intimidating if you ever do need to reach out. And as someone who was raised in India, New Delhi, if anyone's here is from there, but I was raised there until I was 12. And, I do have a lot of family members and everyone. And as we've shared a lot of firsthand experiences and seen firsthand just what all of this could entail and high stress situations could really entail, I think I can speak very on behalf of many people that it is a little bit intimidating to call law enforcement or police or any kind of emergency professional to our home because there's so much stigma and shame that carries with it. And so hopefully this session will provide enough information and make it much easier and much more approachable for many people instead of this boogeyman that everyone kind of creates in their heads as far as law enforcement goes. So yeah, I'm here to keep it real with you guys and answer whatever you've got and just have a good conversation. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Officer Adi. So before we go into the list of questions, and to all of our attendees, ladies and gentlemen, we did compile a list of questions which we have received in the past from team members, community, and our clients. Officer Adi is going to be responding to those. But if you have other questions or any specific questions, feel free to put them in the chat. So one key question, Adi, there is of course 911, it is the emergency number. Then, if you go to any police station or website, there's also a non-emergency number. Then there are numbers for suicide prevention and so on. Would you mind sharing what scenarios 911 is applicable versus the non-emergency and the other numbers, please?
Of course. And you know what? There's a number of different reasons to call all of these different numbers. However, the biggest thing is I've had a lot of different calls where people are hesitant to call 911 because they think, oh, maybe my situation isn't as dire or emergent. Whereas, and they kind of hesitate because of that. And I always tell everyone, if you're confused in the least bit, don't hesitate to call 911, because our dispatchers, they do a great job of delegating all of the calls based off of like what's necessary, what's emergent, and what need requires immediate attention versus what may need to be redirected to, let's say, the domestic violence hotline or the non-emergency number that forwards it to their specialized units. I would say 911 in any situation where you feel as though your safety is endangered or someone else's safety is endangered and there's exigent circumstances or emergency, at like an actual emergency at hand, is very, very straightforward, and it's always dial 911 in those situations. However, in situations such as, I'm sorry about that. I think I lost you guys there for a second. Um, in situations such as I was saying, in situations such as where you suspect that your family member has been continuously getting into arguments and or conflicts with their spouse or a family member, and they're currently not home and it's not an active situation that's going on, you could always at any given point call the non-emergency number as well, which, and just let them know that, hey, this isn't currently happening right now, but this person may need extra resources or extra options, social worker help, or a plethora of different organizations that could better help them. And that makes it so that we don't respond with a high stress situation mindset of it all, and are able to actually um, combine as many options as we can to give to the person that we're going to be speaking with. But again, can't stress this enough. Please call 911 if at any point you are confused, you don't know which one to call. They will themselves, dispatchers are trained to move the calls wherever they're needed to go.
So, our next question again, as we are waiting, everyone, please feel free to include your questions in the chat. They will be responded by Officer Adi. How do we build trust in communities where reporting abuse is so stigmatized, especially in the South Asian community? And one of the reasons that they feel that, even if things are not going well at home or in a situation, they will hesitate to call 911. How do we build their trust?
Honestly, it's through cases and informational meets like this that spread more awareness. And I appreciate Sanjeevni especially for doing this. And also, I'm a part of a domestic violence team through my department as well that allows us to spread more awareness throughout our community within Will County as well. And I'm pretty sure Naperville themselves, they have separate different organizations that spread awareness within their community as well, given the South Asian community as large as it is in Naperville and other areas such as Schaumburg. And hopefully, I love the fact that my officers in my department, and I myself, we try our best to, with every interaction that we do have, every time we have been called in any situation, we do heavily stress the importance of, hey, at any given point, no matter if it's the smallest thing, if it's like the most minor squabble in your mind that you may think that everyone else will think, oh, this isn't something we should call for. Don't hesitate. If you feel as though you need to call, that's literally what we're getting paid to do. We're not gonna do anything except for worst case scenario. Come out there, have a conversation, just have a nice chat, resolve something, hopefully get to a peaceful resolution, and then move on. And it doesn't have to be the end all be all to just call anyone. So I hope that my fellow officers are also able to create this friendly encounter and a welcoming approach to every single call that they go to that helps spread awareness. But ultimately, it's organizations such as Sanjeevni to host these events, and or other organizations that are also doing their part in spreading that awareness within our community that allows it for for everyone to realize that police officers aren't supposed to be intimidating, but more so there to actually help.
What steps generally are taken, supposing if there is a domestic abuse call, and what steps do the police take? How do police assess immediate risk or danger? And many a times it happens that the client may say, I just dialed by mistake, or situation is all okay. We get many instances like these, can you please help us understand what it is, and especially to our clients who are also watching and listening?
Yeah, of course. So many a times we will get those calls where it will be, "Hey, I need help. This person." And I'm sorry, this should be a trigger warning in case I do talk about my cases or anything at all. Should you feel at all triggered by it, please let me know in the chat, and I will try and do my best to adhere to those restrictions of it all too. But many a times we do get calls that require immediate attention, that dispatchers will give us notes as we're actively responding, that hey, this person called. You can hear active screaming in the background, and or you can hear there's a very intense situation where a lot of people are arguing, and it's very hard to understand. And so we'll get those notes from our dispatchers and call takers, and literally 10 to 15, 20 seconds later, we'll get a call back. And then it will be very much so, as you just mentioned, oh, it's okay. It was just a family squabble. It wasn't anything big. Um, we can just, we don't need police help at all. Even in those situations, what I do like, most departments, if not all departments, do typically have some kind of policy set in stone already, that we still have to respond and make contact just to make sure everyone is safe ultimately. And in those situations, every single officer is trained to separate the parties immediately, and assess the situation step by step. The first step is always, and the biggest priority always, is safety. So just to avoid any kind of collusion of sorts between the victim and the offender, should there be a victim and offender in those situations, we do separate both parties, and try to speak in different rooms where we can have a private conversation one-on-one with both parties involved, because there's always two sides to every story. And once we do that, we ask our investigatory questions, and collect the context clues. And based on our observations and the totality of circumstances, we're able to actually make up our decision, based on whether or not an arrest needs to be made, and or just a conversation and some kind of mediation will suffice for this situation today. And if we have probable cause, again, there's a lot of different laws that are currently being formed, and around juvenile domestic calls, especially, where officers are now able to have a little bit more discretion on, okay, we don't have to make an arrest in this situation, even though typically in the past you would have to. And I believe, Jayshree, I do see a question that it's exactly touching on what I'm talking about, which for everyone in the chat, she asked, does every domestic violence call end in an arrest of the aggressor? And most callers fear calling with the fear of arrest, and especially physical abuse. Um, if I may, sorry, I know I kind of just talked a lot there, but if I may address that question as well, not every call has to result in an arrest. And that's exactly what, as we're assessing the entire situation, when we have the probable cause of it all, it doesn't necessarily mean we have to result in an arrest. There are times where we do have to, when we have active injury, and again, another trigger warning here. Should there be any kind of strangulation marks, or any kind of scratches or lacerations, or any kind of active injury that's considered great bodily harm in any capacity, or even bruises of it all. In those situations, yes, officers do have to make an arrest. Again, though, there's so many situations where you don't, or an arrest isn't the only option in every call. So if you are in fear of, oh, this is going to have to be an arrest, you can also on side try, if should the situation permit it, should you be permitted to do so, should the time allow you to do so, you can speak to an officer on private at any given point to ask them, hey, this is my current situation. I'm not involving anyone and everyone, but what would you suggest I do? What would you recommend that I do next time should anything arise? Just so you have more information, you're armed with that knowledge on how to handle that situation in the future.
Jashi, I hope that answered the question. Many a times there are bystanders, neighbors, and community, and they know that there is abuse happening in a certain household or between a couple. What is the safest way for such people to report concern or let law enforcement know about what is happening in that household? And many a time they say, I don't want to be involved. I don't want to speak to anyone, but I know something right is not happening with, her or him or for that couple. And many a times, even victims feel either threatened by their respective spouses or family members. What's the best way, the safest way for them to report?
Yeah, we get a lot of different calls, whether it's from bystanders within their neighborhood and or the apartment complex, and or even people, family members and friends from out of states that have just been communicating via telephone calls or texts or social media of it all. And the best way, honestly, is just you can, if you prefer to be anonymous, you can make a call and give an anonymous tip. And just when you do call 911 and or dispatch the non-emergency number, you can let them know, hey, this is what I've observed. This is what I see is happening. I don't want to be involved directly, but I would like an officer to go check this scene out and this area out. An officer will still respond to that area and actively observe their own, make their own observations, and assess the situations accordingly. Um, you can do so by calling 911 or non-emergency number, or there are many mandated reporters throughout as well. If you're speaking with, let's say, a social worker and or DCFS or anyone, or a teacher, so on and so forth, they will be able to. They do have to they are mandatory mandated reporters, so they will have to report to law enforcement that so and so is happening. But again, in all of these situations, it starts with, even if there have been many situations where bystanders has made a call and the victim wasn't able to make that call themselves, and it has actually saved their lives. And so I would highly encourage bystanders and neighbors and friends. You can at any given point call 911. You can call the non-emergency number and advise them, hey, this is what I've observed. This is what's happening in this area, and I would like an officer to go check it out. If you would like to remain anonymous, you of course can, and you can request that welfare check at any given point.
There's also a question, probably you already addressed it. Does the DCFS get involved if there is a child who has witnessed abuse at home? Many women callers fear losing custody.
Yeah, no, that's and it's a great question. That is a very valid fear, especially within our community, as when there's already so much stigma within South Asian communities as is, with law enforcement or oh, what the neighbors may think. That is an added stress. What I will say is, in every domestic violence call that we do get, should there be children at home that have witnessed the abuse happening, and even like a large or loud interaction or argument, at least, whether it's emotional abuse or physical abuse, we are required to notify DCFS. What I will say before, I understand that can be that can incite panic in many people. What I will say, DCFS does a great job of investigating each case as in depth as they can. While we are mandated to report to DCFS, that does not mean that your children will be taken away or there will be any more serious cases. DCFS deals with many, like a plethora of different situations that that require removal of children or other sources to come into play. But trust, it takes a lot of and a very intense situation for it to actually lead to such a resolution. Most of the times, majority of the times, it let's say, hypothetically speaking, it's a domestic violence call that's two couples arguing and it's verbal only, and there's no physical abuse in any capacity, and a child has witnessed it. A DCFS agent, and I don't work for DCFS, but this is what I've seen in my practice and in my experience. I've seen DCFS agents come out and just look at and assess their own, do their own assessment of the situation of the home, of how the relationships are, and then make their decision accordingly. And 9 times out of 10, again, they're also aware of the fact that family squabbles do happen, tensions do rise, and at times there are going to be intense situations. But there's a very big difference between high intense situations between just family members and abuse, and they're very good at doing their job and assessing and differentiating between the two.
Thank you so much. Jashi, hope that helped for your question. And Officer Adi, Chicago, Illinois, US, it has all kinds of communities. Many a times they are immigrants. Some of them who are working, maybe they are not US citizens or they have a different kind of a visa. Many a times they say they are hesitant to report because they fear that a call to the police will go into their records and it may affect either their employment or their immigrant status.
I mean, given the current atmosphere, especially within this country, that's an entirely valid line of question and concern. I believe, I understand that it's very stressful, and truth be told, many people, even my close friends and family, do share this concern. Um, in any situation where they do have to interact with a law enforcement official in any capacity, right? Um, what I will say is police officers and law enforcement officials, we are required to assess the situation and handle the emergency at hand. We do not revoke any kind of any legal status of anyone or their ability to live within this country, especially within Chicago area. It is a refuge city. There's no concern for that with us. We do not involve, at least as far as I know, within Will County and Plainfield Police Department and other departments, we do not work with any kind of um, agency that does handle legal statuses, so on and so forth. We are there to assess the situation at hand. And I don't want anyone to ever question their ability to reach out to a law enforcement officer just because they believe that we have the authority or power to, worst case scenario, deport someone and or report them to an agency that may come after them for such a thing. We are there to simply handle the call. We are able to get as much information as we can, and should there be an issue with someone's status, again, we don't report that any further than we need to. Where all we do is, if it's, let's say, an informational report, hypothetically speaking, we are called to a home where someone is there just on a work visa and or student visa. We have nothing to do with that. We have no reason to investigate any further than, okay, this is your name, this is your date of birth, we're just going to be using it for our report, and we're going to go from there. Especially if you are the victim in the situation, you have absolutely no reason to worry or be afraid of any of these issues at all, because we are ultimately there to make sure safety is our first priority, make sure everyone is okay, make sure if there's a medical emergency, we are there to handle ourselves in the best ways that we can and provide as much assistance as possible. So we don't go into any kind of legal statuses and or visa status and so on and so forth.
I think to all our listeners who are watching this through Facebook, I believe this will be a very helpful piece of information. Should there be an emergency, there should not be any hesitation in reaching out to 911 for help. And once again, ladies and gentlemen who have joined this call on Zoom, if there are any other questions, feel free to add them to the chat. So, Officer Adi, moving on, uh, can you also help everyone to understand what is order of protection? And is this only available if someone is in imminent danger? And what typically happens when someone gets this order of protection?
Yeah, of course. Order of protection is a very great option that everyone has, given their situation. What I will start by and preface this by saying is a law enforcement department or agency has no control on order of protection. Um, Order of protection can only be granted and issued by a judge. You can get an order of protection, which is, well, let me backtrack a little bit. An order of protection is a restraining order. It has stipulations on, and it all depends on case by case, where hypothetically speaking, let's give some examples of it all, would be you can't have contact with XYZ person because they've offended and committed a crime in some degree, and or harassment, stalking, so on and so forth. What it does is it creates a safety net for the victim to feel as okay and safe and living in the atmosphere and environment that they are. And there are protective addresses, let's say they could be protective addresses, schools for children, so on and so forth. So if a person, in hypothetically speaking, in a domestic violence situation, let's say a spouse gets an order of protection against their own other partner, I've seen situations where there are stipulations where the person who the petitioner has received full custody of the kids in that situation for at least a few weeks until the court date decides any further resolution for those situations, or they've received stipulations where they can't harass or enter certain homes or speak with any family members during that period. And there's a lot more different stipulations with this as far as property cases go, social school statuses, and everything goes. So order of protection is a great way of someone that feels as though they need a government assistance in any capacity to create some level of safety net for between them and the offender. It's a great source to have, and you can acquire it actually just by going to your local county courthouse. And every county clerk is very great at explaining the entire process of how to go about acquiring this. You can speak with them and they'll guide you through step-by-step procedure on how to get an appointment in front of a judge who can then appoint an issue the order of protection should your situation permit it. Now, the other part of this question was, is order of protection only issued in during imminent danger? It is not. You can get an emergency order of protection depending on it, again, case by case situation. A judge may issue an emergency order of protection, which will allow for a few weeks between you and the offender. However, you can also go for an overall order of protection that's not an emergency situation. You can go after a week of an incident, 2 weeks, or there's not really a timeline set. As long as the case permits it, you can go in front of a judge, explain your situation and your story, and judge will decide whether or not an order of protection is warranted or not. And that will then lead to several stipulations and so on and so forth.
Very helpful, because a lot of the times, community does not know. They want to be safe, but what is the process to get order of protection? And per Sanjeevani's understanding, all of this is free. There is no cost involved in it.
That is correct. And also, there are other organizations and legal services, which, Pramila, if you, I will forward a list of organizations, at least that are within Will County. I will forward you all of that information that Sanjeevani, I hope, and can
Mm.
just distribute accordingly as well. But there are organizations that assist in free legal advice and services for those that may need that assistance in any capacity. This entire process is free. You can also just simply go to your county clerk and they will explain everything to you accordingly.
Thank you so much, Officer Adi. So, as ladies and gentlemen, as you know, Sanjeevani works across two areas: mental health and domestic abuse. Many a times it happens that there is someone in the house who is going through mental health concerns, who is an adult, and maybe their behavior turns aggressive, or if there could be situations they want to hurt the other person. In these situations, it's not actually domestic abuse, but when the family calls 911, how do officers, or are officers trained to distinguish between mental health concerns versus a criminal act? And generally, what is the process to help in such scenarios?
That's a great question. All officers are required to go through what's called a crisis intervention training. It's in short CIT. Within that training, we are taught how to handle de-escalation and further empathize with situations when dealing with people with any kind of mental disability, such as schizophrenia or autism, or um, a plethora of different disorders that may, illnesses that may be, that we may encounter on this job. If anyone has any kind of psychosis or emotional distress, this training helps us identify signs of those. And there have been times where we'll get called, and again, this is trigger warning for those here today. There have been times where we've been called for when a family member is calling on behalf of their own child who's on the spectrum, is nonverbal, but is having a very is in emotional distress and is having a very violent episode. They don't want, they do fear calling law enforcement because they believe police officers will automatically arrest that child. However, that's not the case in the least bit. We go there, we assess the situation, we do our best to de-escalate as much as we can. And while we do that, while we are speaking with their child in this example, we also immediately alert our our community fire department and EMS, who is also, they're all trained in CIT as well, and they assist us in with their expertise of medicating the subject and getting them the proper help that they need. It doesn't always result in an arrest. We are trained to look at each situation and make our decision based on the totality of the circumstances. So I don't want anyone to be in fear, although I understand that's a big ask, but I would prefer everyone does feel comfortable in just asking for help and reaching out, because we are trained to differentiate between a mental health incident as well as versus a criminal incident.
Piggybacking on that, Officer Adi, uh, a lot of times clients have adult children going through mental health concerns, and say when the law enforcement team comes and they ask this adult person, are you okay? Do you want to go to the hospital? Do you want us to help? And they say, I'm fine. And of course, because they are adult, their consent is taken as the final decision and no action gets taken. Again, I'm sharing based on what clients have shared. And
Mhm.
we have also been informed of a writ of detention, which which from the information shared to us is an order which allows law enforcement to help the adult child even if they are not consenting to get treatment. Could you please elaborate if this the context and is the process correct?
Yeah, I think what you're referring to may be the involuntary admittal of the child,
Yes,
and or
please.
the involuntary admittal. It again depends on case by case. The way that that would look is, let's say someone is having a manic episode, however, they're able to make sense to us, but we show up on scene, and again, this is something we've seen. I've seen in my job, in my experience of it all, where I've shown up to scene. Trigger warning for everyone here. I've shown up to a scene and I've seen property being damaged and or chairs broken, for example, or holes in the wall of it all. But when I speak with the person, with the adult, the child of the parents that called, they speak very clear and straight to the point with me and are able to answer all of my questions very clearly. However, they have a history of episodes such as this. They have a history of violent episodes like this. The parents in those situations are able to explore the option of involuntary admittal, which they will have to fill out a form, which the fire department, EMS, those professionals will be able to further elaborate on this. Once you fill out this form, you can actually sign and petition for your child, whether they are adult or not, to go to the hospital. And should that get accepted by the hospital, it all depends on case by case scenario. But you have that option at your disposal.
A lot of our clients, if they are watching this through Facebook, it is going to be very, very helpful because this is a way for them to help their adult child get necessary treatment. Uh, One more thing which our team have often done for our clients is wellness check. Could you also please help, especially to all who have joined Zoom and our social network watchers, what it is and what scenarios should we be reaching out for wellness check?
Yeah, wellness checks. And welfare checks, wellness checks. These checks are just a call that you make to your local police department, or let's say you're just a concerned family member in a different state. But you had a really stressful and or concerning conversation with a family member in a different state. You can always call that police department and say, "Hey, I'm really concerned because I just had this conversation." And it's very plain language. You just have this conversation with the dispatcher, the call taker, and explain to them that I'm really concerned for this person's well-being. Can I please ask an officer to go over there and just make sure that everything is okay, everyone is safe, and there's no situation that warrants any kind of further action from law enforcement. We just want to make sure that this person is okay. And that's really all a wellness check is at the end of the day.
Thank you so much, Officer. I think well, right now you've answered all our questions. Thank you so much. There is only three of them. Once again, to everyone who's on the Zoom call, if you have any additional questions which have not been covered, kindly do add it in the chat. Uh, Domestic abuse related to this. How can individuals build a safety plan if they're not ready to leave? Secondly, what's the best way to support someone experiencing abuse? And lastly, sorry if I'm giving all the questions at once, what should teens and young adults know about healthy relationships? I know this is not directly to law enforcement, but any guidelines or advice the police have?
I'm so sorry. So just so I have that.
Yeah.
Um,
So, how can individuals build a safety plan if they're not ready to leave? So, supposing a couple, the
sure.
family is in an abusive situation, what is the safety plan if they are not ready to report, or they need to process
Mhm.
this is process this themselves?
Of course. Valid questions. The safety plan, honestly, it all depends case by case. There's no black and white answer to all of this. It all depends on, even if you're not ready to seek help. Um, if you're just wanting to explore your options, I hope that you find yourself in a non-emergent situation where you can speak with an officer at any given point, whether like you're in active. Well, if you're in active danger, please call 911. But even if you're not, and you have the opportunity to just make a call, by all means, at any given point, you can reach out and speak to an officer through non-emergency and or a social worker in your own local department. They will provide you with numbers. I know we have our own, and they're able to get you connected with someone who can give you as many options and what you can do and what's at your disposal. Because again, at the end of the day, knowledge is power, and it's able to give you a better insight on what you can do, and perhaps that will motivate you to seek help ultimately. Because I think when in situations such as this, those that are seeking help or that want that safety net are often feeling powerless. But when you do have these conversations with your local police department, that is ultimately how you're going to feel more powerful as you have more options and more tools on your tool belt.
Okay. Domestic abuse situation generally happens if the relationship is not healthy. And most often people think domestic abuse is just between, partners, between spouses, between girlfriend, boyfriend, and so on and so forth. But domestic abuse could be between parent and child, could be with siblings, could be with any family members, right? So, what are some of the ways can the police help or guide to ensure that the relationship is healthy so that, that the situation of a domestic abuse does not come into place at all?
Of course. I mean, there have been many a times we've been called where it's not an active domestic violence scene that's going on, and it doesn't always have to be between a romantic relationship. It can be a family member between a mother and a child, or a father and his child, or even cousins or roommates, even so on and so forth. And anyone that shares an intimate setting and has a relationship deeper than just that of friends out and about and or strangers and so on and so forth. If you have, they can, if you have those relationships and you are concerned for any kind of conflict, you can call at any given point, and an officer will respond and give you more options regarding it. And as far as guidelines for anyone that's going through certain situations can go, how to better prevent it, even if it's a small argument that you find not really like not that intense, or that's you may think that, oh, this isn't something that's too serious of a situation. You're allowed to still call, and you're actually, in fact, you're encouraged to give a call. Just do so even if you want. And the situations, call the non-emergency number and explain to them what's going on, and will again respond out and just speak with you and give you all the knowledge that you're seeking in that moment to help you create a guideline.
Two questions just came in. Sanjeevani works with about 7 shelters across the Chicagoland area, because there have been situations where either the female partner or the male partner has to go and seek refuge there. Say, supposing a domestic abuse call comes to the police, do law enforcement also do a periodic check?
Um, Periodic check on the shelter, on the victim, or
Yeah, say, for example, the person has gone to the shelter. Uh,
Mhm.
do law enforcement or the specific police officers or anyone from the uh, police department go and check on these people who are there in the shelters who have been there due
um,
to a domestic abuse situation?
So a social worker will typically follow up. In those cases, a police officer will not. A law enforcement official will just forward the case and the report and everything to a social worker and other professionals who will then conduct the follow-ups.
Yes. Uh, I think at least all of the questions which clients had given have already been answered. To everyone in the Zoom, feel free to unmute yourself if you have any specific questions which Officer Adi can respond or share. Anyone? I'm sure lots of questions come up, and in the fear, the concern. I know all kids are taught in emergency or anything, call 911. But in spite of that, there are many in the community who hesitate. They suffer in silence, and sometimes the consequences of that can become really terrible if help is not sought out in the right time. So anyone in the group, if they have any additional questions, you can also put it in the chat or you can unmute yourself. Oh, nothing to be intimidated today. It's a safe setting, and this is a community conversation that we want to have, that more people know about the services, what actually happens, what is the process. The police 911 is to help community, irrespective of how they are here, what ethnicity they are. Their objective is to help, remove the crisis, intervene to give them uh, relief from the issues that they are having, right? So going once, twice, thrice. Officer Adi, so these were my questions. Any other concluding information you would like to share? There are many community leaders also in the call. It may be very helpful.
Yeah, no, I think everyone has asked great questions, and you've asked very informative questions. And I hope that this session has helped people to feel more comfortable in calling for and reaching out to your local law enforcement. What I would just like to leave here as a reminder here is, please remember, we are here ultimately to serve you and assist you in any and all way that we can. Never hesitate. No call is too small. No call is too light for us to come out and just have a conversation at the end of the day. That is genuinely what we are paid to do.
Really appreciate your time, Officer Adi. It has been extremely helpful and informative. And to everyone watching on Facebook and also in the Zoom call, if you have specific questions which have not been covered today, feel free to send them to Sanjeevani. We will share them with Officer Adi, and he will be able to respond on that. So he's here to help us, to help the community. And hopefully, armed with all of this information, we can help our neighbors, our community that we serve in a much more productive and better way. Thank you so much, Officer Adi. Appreciate all your time. And everyone joining, Thanks so much for joining here. I hope it was informative. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Please take care. And yes, please reach out with any questions. And Sanjeevni organization, thank you so much for organizing this and giving me the chance to inform people and hopefully spread more awareness. Please reach out with any questions and I will be happy to answer it in due time. You guys take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.